Lockbox, Chapter 6. Donaldson had been busy at work managing his store one day when his destiny took an unplanned turn. It was when Jasmine first brought her lucid dreamers group to his attention and had told him about this mysterious person called the Elder. One thing led to another, even to Donaldson joining Jasmine's lucid dreamers group. Strange things began happening to the game hunter turned store owner. His imagination became more vivid. The Elder became more solid in his life, more influential. More solid in his life, more influential. At first, after joining the Lucid Dreamers group, the voice of the Elder came into his life like a distant whisper. The distant whisper became more tangible with each dream experience, until what usually was just a voice became physical manifestations, which Donaldson became progressively more skilled at conjuring. And it was not just happening to him. Jasmine would share her experience with him too. In fact, each member of the Lucid Dreamers group had their own capacity to configure dreamscapes from their vivid imaginations. One of their sessions became so sharp that dreams collided into each other. And for Donaldson, a dream of an Orthodox Christian icon he was staring at to focus his mind on the ancient town of Ephesus led to the image of a being of bright white light, inexplicably launching right into his chest with frightening reality. The impact of this spectral flash stunned Donaldson as he sat in the circle of the group. He looked around at the others, distant as they were in their different imaginations. From that day, Donaldson became superior to all the others in the Lucid Dreamers group. He could configure from his imagination realities others could not. The members of the Lucid Dreamers group became the students, and he the powerful teacher. As a result, they all advanced more rapidly in the art of inducing, conjuring, configuring, directing the contents of their minds into controlled dreams. They came to experience together in intimate bonding ways the ability to communicate what they manipulated in dreams while still in their own everyday lives. They called it the waking life. This distinction between the dream world and the waking life had its frightening edge. Some conjured moments left them in doubt as to which reality in which they anchored themselves, in fact, was their reality. Through all these experiences, one thing stood out with complete concreteness to Donaldson and Jasmine: the predictions of the Elder. And through them, Donaldson tried to keep calm. He hated the moments when he lost control of his imagination. He hated those faceless communications from the Elder. The Elder never physically revealed himself. The owner of Little Town Grocery Store never got used to the many ways in which the Elder avoided meeting him, and yet had this mysterious power to terrify Donaldson into action. This terror had a very distant edge to it, like the distance of time. Donaldson bore a grudge against the Elder Jasmine introduced him to, and it annoyed Donaldson that for Jasmine, a woman he now claimed to love, the Elder became more and more a comforter. Sometimes the Elder would communicate through a document. Sometimes a person would simply show up at his door, or Donaldson would find a message in his daughter's lunchbox. Nowhere and no place did this bothersome dream figure from Jasmine's imagination leave him in peace. Strangely, over several weeks, what Donaldson felt of Jasmine took on an urgent requirement. This requirement involved loving Jasmine away from the mysterious Elder. Donaldson began to pursue Jasmine's heart. He learned more about her lost husband, how he died of cancer. He cultivated the things she liked, took her on walks, visited flower shops with her to help her build her garden. He took her to movies, bowling, to share dinner, until the two of them were making love in his apartment. Jasmine insisted she didn't want to tell Sarah about their relationship, not yet, and that suited Donaldson just fine. He had his own plans for Jasmine, and strangely, he never asked himself why. It was almost as if he were living a reality not his own. He often found himself looking into a mirror, staring into his green eyes, and thinking he was seeing someone else there. It was an odd sensation, an odd effect on Donaldson. After he and Jasmine had climaxed and lovemaking sessions, and as he entered his bathroom to wash, it felt like he had walked through a mist into a realm of spheres. One night he woke up next to Jasmine in a cold sweat, his heart racing. He had dreamed of being trapped in a mirror, his fat cheeks pressed against its unyielding glass, and he saw himself outside the mirror looking in, staring at brilliantly flashing white eyes. The sight made him stumble out of the bathroom into his dark bedroom, looking down on the sleeping Jasmine, her desired petite naked form before him. He knew then he would marry her and keep her forever in his world. It all began one day when Jasmine had come to pick up Sarah, and while waiting for her daughter to close her cash register, she approached Donaldson. "Fred, Fred." Donaldson stepped out of his office, shaking his head. "Jasmine, are you the only one around here who calls me by my first name?" "Well, it's shorter," Jasmine said with a laugh. She grew serious. "It's also my dead husband's name. Coincidence? Deja vu? How can I help you, Jasmine?" She unrolled a dark-looking paper and handed it to Donaldson. He stared at it. "It's not in English. It's in Greek." "I see that," chuckled Donaldson in his usual way. Jasmine pressed on excitedly. "I got it from a friend in my lucid dreamers group." Donaldson chuckled incredulously. "Your lucid dreamers what? Okay, what's the joke?" Jasmine frowned. "Joke? I'm not trying to punk you, Fred. Seriously, you can read it, can't you? I know you majored in Greek in college." "Yes, but that was long ago." He mulled over the document. "At this moment, I can only make out a few of the words. This one here reads, 'The Elder,' and this one, it obviously refers to the elect lady. The rest," he shrugged, "I don't know." He moved to hand it back to Jasmine. However, she pulled away. "No, no, I need you to translate the entire thing for me." "Listen, Jas, please, please," pleaded Jasmine. "I really need to know what the Greek says, from someone I trust." "There's no one in your, what did you call it, the Lucid Dreamers group, who can translate it?" Donaldson took the document. "I will need my books to complete the translation from the Greek. Come back in a couple days." Jasmine nodded anxiously and departed. For days, Donaldson toiled over the single Greek writing. Then one night he heard a knock on his door. It was already late at night, and he felt grumpy. As he approached the door in his narrow hallway, he stared at his finished translation in disbelief, wondering if he had gotten it right. Then and there, Donaldson decided he would need an expert second opinion about his translation. He crumbled the translated paper into his pocket and drew his attention to the knock on his front door. He turned on his security camera view and saw it was Jasmine. He took a deep breath and opened the door. "Jasmine, it's after 11 p.m. I know," said Jasmine anxiously. She stormed past him into his apartment. "Did you finish the translation, huh? What did it say?" He followed her into the living room, where he silently watched her take a seat. She was fidgeting, wringing her hands, turning her head from left to right. Jasmine had always been an energetic persona, and now that energy was clearly agitated. Donaldson took a seat opposite her in his easy chair. "Nervous much?" he quipped. Then he smirked. He could see the fear in Jasmine's brown eyes, and at the same time excitement, the force more natural to Jasmine. Donaldson's living room was big and had a brown interior motif. His couch was a three-piece brown monstrosity. He had a huge winter brown mural on the wall behind the couch, and a big game hunting animal head attached to the walls on all four corners. A bookshelf blocked out where the window would have been, covered with big game hunting books, and he had a long gun shelved on the wall behind his easy chair. Donaldson loved hunting. He could be as fearless as a lion. Nevertheless, this letter Jasmine had left him to read spooked him. Rather than answer her question outright about his translation of her paragraph, he queried, "Tell me more about this elder." "Oh, he's amazing. It's almost like he floats on air," Jasmine said nervously. "It's rather odd, though. Sometimes I can imagine him with me when our lucid dreamers group are conjuring together. Solid, concrete, real. Other times he's like a ghost." Nodding her head and looking confused. "I'm sorry, I sound crazy, don't I?" Donaldson chuckled. "Yes, frankly, you sound crazy. This lucid dreamer group, what are they about?" "It's a group I helped form to understand why I could still feel myself at home when I dreamed. I met this priest at Angelica's coffee shop named Father Seraphim. Told me about lucid dreaming when I explained to him what I was experiencing. He said he knew a couple of his parishioners who had been exposed to the same nighttime struggles. He connected us and we started this group. One of my lucid dreamer companions gave me this excerpt after a short dream session. He said it was from a letter that the elder wrote. He told me that, in his dream, the elder knew my future and wanted to help me." Donaldson took a deep breath. He sat back in his easy chair, thought a moment, then stood up. "How about some tea?" Sure. He disappeared into the hall first, closed the door to his sleeping daughter's room, then came around the bar to the kitchen, which was easily viewed from the living room. He began the water to make tea. Then he came back and sat down. "You said all this had to do with your dreams. Your companions, are they all Christians? You said a Father Seraphim introduced you to them." Yes, a couple of them are. Not all, though. I'm not." "I'm not a religious man either, as you know. But I had thought of Christianity as a comforting faith, a reassuring one." "Oh, I've come to think it's comforting too. Maybe you should join our group. Then maybe you can help me better understand the elder and the things I am learning from him and from his community." "His community?" "He has a community." "Of course, silly," laughed Jasmine nervously. I configure a dreamscape with my lucid dreamers group. I imagine him living in the ancient city of Ephesus. Then I'm there in his world." "Wow, Jasmine, I don't know. You translated the paragraph, right? Is it genuine?" Donaldson got up. He walked into the kitchen. He mixed some orange-scented herb tea and returned with 2 hot cups of brew, one in each hand. Gesturing toward Jasmine with his left hand, she grabbed her cup of tea, sipping it carefully. He returned to his seat. "I am not prepared to render a sure translation of your paragraph. I need a little more time." "I see," thought Jasmine. "Well, I'll be patient. In the meantime, come join us." "Why would I do that, Jasmine?" All the time he's thinking of his own translation of that paragraph from the Greek. His hand went into his pocket, squeezing it. Jasmine pressed her suggestion. "I don't know why, really. It just seems appropriate, considering your love of ancient Greek. Aren't you the least bit curious, now that you've read this for me?" Donaldson took a long drink of his tea, silently placed it on the tray next to his easy chair, and squeezed the translation paper in his pocket. He trembled slightly in his seat. Fear and doubt clouded his visage. What he thought he had read on the note grew larger with implication every time Jasmine uttered a statement. The undertone of destiny in her voice intrigued Donaldson. Lucid dreaming had wild adventure promises implied by the activity. After all, didn't he love the hunt? His mind thought about all the things he might be able to, as Jasmine described it, conjure. Would it be possible he could learn how to lucid dream like Jasmine? You should not take to heart everything you read on a silly old piece of paper, Jasmine. You have a wonderful daughter, Sara. I'm sure she would be appalled. You must never tell her this, blurted Jasmine. She would despise my interest in the Christian faith. She's not a believer, and I didn't raise her to think of otherworldly realities. She would think I've lost my mind. We've lived a special life together, Sara and I don't want her to discover what I'm going through just yet, until I know what it means all myself. And there's no telling how the potential change in outlook for me will affect her. I have a plan which I think will help her in the right way, point her in the correct direction. You can't control Sara's fate, Jasmine. Donaldson understood life this way. He took another sip of his tea and then retrieved the translation note from his pocket. He held it up to Jasmine's view. Do you know what the chances are of anyone encountering an autograph of an ancient document? Do you understand the value of such a find? And it is in perfect condition, as if it wasn't almost 2,000 years old. Jasmine set her cup of tea down on the glass-topped coffee table in front of her. So, it is real then, not a forgery. She paused thoughtfully. Our group really brought this into our waking life. Donaldson deflected a question for a moment. He was a game hunter, an explorer. He had been to many dangerous places in the dark wilds of Africa and South America. It may not be your concern, but how do you know this document was not stolen from a museum or university where they keep such things in airtight conditions? Who is this elder you mentioned? Jasmine was shocked and fearfully cut him off. The elder is not a thief. Not even close. What a horrible thing to say. Donaldson studied Jasmine for a moment. I see. That's quite a witness for a dream figure you say you conjured from your imagination. I will need a few more days. Let me have some time to get a second opinion on my translation. Then I will let you know what I found. This idea of joining your group, it sounds fascinating to me. Perhaps I will take you up on the invitation to come visit your group with you. The idea of recreating Asia Minor, where ancient Greek is spoken, is very alluring. His eyes lingered on Sara. Her petite form, her long black hair, and dark almond-shaped eyes attracted the lust in him. I will keep this as our little secret. Not a word to Sara. Excellent, whispered Jasmine. Their eyes locked on each other. There they stood, drinking in each other's soul. Then the spell broke. Thank you, Donaldson, Jasmine forced herself to say. I've been unable to fully contain my anxiety over what this ancient scribbling portended. Jasmine energetically stood up and started toward the front door. Our Lucid Dreamers group meets every Saturday evening. We call it the Vespers. Lockbox, Chapter 7. It was a busy shopping day at Littletown Grocery. It was Payday Friday, and this month payday included the monthly government support checks for poor citizens deposited into their bank accounts. So the grocery was crowded and bustling with activity. Sara found herself constantly in need, flitting from one cashier to the next to authorize some checks for cashing or clarify a sales price or help with a transaction. Sometimes she helped pack grocery bags. Littletown did have a self-serve section, but it was a small one, having only 2 stations for those with limited number of items to purchase. Donaldson preferred person-to-person interactions, so instead of a large self-service section, he instead hired people to be his actual cashiers. And the store had four girls and one guy manning the cash registers, and each register had a line of four or more customers. As Sarah moved around the store, tending her various tasks, Donaldson stuck his head out of his office door. Sarah, can you come in for a moment? He went back inside and sat at his desk. Sarah came in, her energy level high. Yes, Mr. Donaldson. Sit down. Take a load off your feet. Yes, but don't worry about it. The cashiers can handle it. Rhonda's out there, isn't she? Yes, but come sit down. Sarah anxiously sat down, half Japanese, half Anglo, eyes darting about at the cashiers and crowds. Donaldson leaned forward and folded his hands in front of Sarah, hoping to calm her down because he had questions, big questions. How are you doing, Sarah? What do you mean? I mean, it's been a couple weeks since. Sarah took a deep breath. I'm fine. Really. I cry from time to time. She paused, memories of her mother flooding into her, choking her up. Sarah was surprised how quickly she was emotionally triggered. That emotional hole in her chest had yet to close. I'm trying to focus on work, you know. Life goes on. The bills have not stopped. Donaldson chuckled lightly. Life goes on, yes. He stood up and walked around behind Sarah and gazed at the active cashiers on the grocery store floor. Sarah followed his movements with her head. His forlorn look penetrated her anxiety over the cashiers. Is there something wrong? I used to be an unbeliever, like you. Excuse me, I don't understand what you mean. Gesturing to the crowd of shoppers in his view through the glass wall, he said, how many do you guess of these people we serve believe the end of the world is near because of their faith in Jesus? The end of the world? Sarah laughed. She continued with a flippant reply. Not too many, probably. She cocked her head with curiosity. Her dark eyes narrowed, staring at Donaldson more intensely. What are you getting at? You have an interest in the end of the world? Donaldson, I've never known you to be religious. What gives? Donaldson turned to face Sarah. Jasmine talked to you a lot about such things before she died, didn't she? My mother didn't believe anything until the last year of her life. She paused. Her mind raced to catch up with this very odd inquiry. The sudden inquiry bothered Sarah. She had been healing, she thought, getting used to the quiet at home, to her mother not humming in her little garden outside their trailer home. Now Donaldson was opening sheltered memories. Sarah was the intellectual type, and she loved to delve into philosophy and politics, but religion she kept at a distance. We are super busy today, boss. This is more important. Really? Sarah stood up now and walked over to Donaldson. What my mother talked about to me personally about the end of the world is more important than me doing my job for you as the assistant manager. You're starting to sound weird, I must say. She laughed. I am not going to take you seriously. Is this your odd way of showing your condolences? I know you and mother rarely saw eye to eye, but you don't have to worry about that anymore. Donaldson cut her off. You have no clue about my relationship with Jasmine. Stunned, Sarah stumbled on. I'm not my mother. Well, not totally like her. As you said, I'm an unbeliever. She considered for a second. Well, unbeliever, maybe too certain a term. She reflected again. I never thought the issue was relevant to my everyday life. I never even thought about such things to say I have a reason to believe or not to believe. Some say, continued Donaldson as he turned and walked back behind his desk, that the term the elder refers to the Apostle John. The Apostle John? Who's that? He sat down slowly. You don't know who the Apostle John is? Of course, I know, sort of, who he is. Sarah remained standing. Can I get back to work? Donaldson laughed, almost menacingly. You're at work, right now, on my dime. This is your job, for now. What? I want you to research everything you can about the elder. You've got to be kidding me. I'm deadly serious. I'll pay you triple your present hourly rate. Damn it, I'll even do one better. I'll put you on salary. 65,000 for the year. How does that sound? Don't thank me. It's done. Rhonda can take over your duties from now on until your task is complete. I'm not college educated. I'm not a trained historian. You're about to go on a crash course. Sarah was stunned and sat down. But why me? Why? Because Jasmine would have wanted it that way. Do you love your mother? I loved her more than my own life. But what? Well, then you are more than qualified for this task. Dodson got up and walked over to his door. He called out to Rhonda, told her to take over Sarah's duties, and that Sarah will be engaged in some new activities on behalf of Little Town Grocery. He turned to Sarah. Now, get out of here and go to your new job. Lockbox, Chapter 8. Because Jasmine would have wanted it that way. The words of Donaldson marinated in Sarah's thoughts as she drove to her trailer home in her green Volvo. She couldn't believe what had just happened to her. The promise of the $65,000 salary hung there in her mind, too, an impossible gift of financial security. She and her mother had not experienced the peace and comfort of that much money in one year in their entire lives. Her mother made maybe 20,000 in any given year at most. If they were truly fortuitous in a single year, they might scratch together 25,000 for a single year. Sarah felt as if she had just experienced unjust luck. She couldn't escape the irony and the regret. Her mother was speaking to her still, touching her life with what Sarah received as an unfair boon. So many reflections drilled into her thinking as she pulled into the little parking spot in front of the white trailer and beside the white picket fence. The little garden where Jasmine spent so many of her sunny days led up to the front door of the trailer home. Sarah made her way up to the walk to her front door, admitting to herself she knew next to nothing about the Apostle John. She had heard of the title and name before, nothing more. She had the kind of knowledge about the Apostle John Western culture which seep into its adherents, and that only if they paid close attention at all the cultural cues. The church names, the icon images, the ubiquitous television renditions. Sarah had given Western culture no direct thought at all, and as far as Christianity went, even less so, until her mother started to change, until Jasmine started to act weird and started to caring about things she had never cared about before. As Sarah opened her front door and stepped into the trailer's entryway, so many mental drum rolls were rattling through her mind. Goaded by the cerebral drumbeat, Sarah went straight to her mother's room, to the dresser drawer, where she kept the lockbox and its key, and she retrieved them. Going into the living room, she sat down on the black leather couch, staring at her mother's white and purple embroidered lockbox. The intertwined colors of the lockbox overcame Sarah. Tears filled her eyes as she turned and explored the yin and yang of the lockbox in her hands. Mother, she whispered, I miss you so. Sarah sobbed. The world around her felt so unreal, so dark, and her mind bore the heavy weight of the agony of loss in her heart. The anguish of thinking she would never see her mother again, that this white and purple lockbox and its mysterious contents remained as the final wish of Jasmine, bent Sarah down. She bowed her head, and her forehead rested on the lockbox. She thought of her mother, thought of seeing her again, and imagined her mother alive, standing over her, cradling Sarah's head to her stomach. It was as if Sarah could hear her mother speak, caressing Sarah's cheeks. Come, daughter, take my hand. I will show you Ephesus. Sarah, her forehead cradling the lockbox. Oh, mother, I wish you were here. It's been so hard going on without you. She lifted her head, and the familiar living room lingered silently before her. I almost felt you, Mother, as if you were here, but that can't be true, right? She laughed nervously at herself. She inhaled deeply, then she felt the slight brush of cool air, like a light wind went by. But the interior of the trailer was silently before her. Mother? Sarah shook her head confused. She stood up and made her way to her mother's darkened bedroom. She didn't bother to turn on the light. She knew the room well. Walking over to the dresser drawer, she pulled it open, and she nestled the lockbox and its key back in its place. The inertia of the lockbox rebuked her. She looked down at its key. She had made the promise to herself. She wouldn't open the lockbox. She closed the dresser drawer and took a deep breath. The morning isn't over, she mumbled to herself. Leaving the room, she made a deliberate point to close the bedroom door behind her. Every temptation to open the lockbox had to be distanced. Any foolish idea of feeling her mother's presence or hearing her melodious Japanese accented voice had to be discarded as wishful thinking. Let the dead be dead, she mumbled to herself. And after a while, Sarah settled into the living room couch. A cup of tea carried its lemony aroma to her nostrils, and she sat under the lone beam of a night lamp on one of the corner tables of the couch. She had no idea where to begin to fill her task of her new job, but she was determined to do what it took. $65,000 was a lot of money to screw around losing. The opportunity connected her to her mother again, and an unexpected new umbilical cord to her now cremated matriarch. In the year leading up to her passing, Jasmine had spoken often of the elder, but Sarah had hardly paid any real attention to her mother's affirmations. Now Sarah needed to remember those conversations, and she needed to find clues to her new journey. Perhaps, if she opened the lockbox, she would find the answers she needed. But Sarah dismissed the idea from her mind. She had a grim determination inside of her, a deep conviction that it was an intrusion. No matter how her mother thought of it, Sarah believed, since her mother had kept this part of her life a secret while living, it was gratuitous now to invade that territory of secrets. Sarah's reasoning continued to confirm her determination. She sat on the couch silently reflecting on the path ahead until she drank her tea empty from its cup. Satisfaction, however tenuous, steadied Sarah. Then a knock came at the door, and she could tell from the knock immediately who it might be. She rose from her contemplations and walked over to the front door across from the living room. As anticipated, Sarah opened the door to see Rhonda standing outside in the darkness under the porch light. You did exactly what I warned you not to do, Rhonda said as she stormed her way into the trailer. It's a salaried opportunity, Sarah defended herself, and more money than I ever imagined making in a year. She closed the door. She turned to Rhonda and had quickly moved into the kitchen off to the left through the living room. Sarah followed. She watched as Rhonda stared out the sink window. The kitchen window had an unobstructed view of the Flatirons. In the valley in the foreground lay the city of Boulder, where in the night the halo of its lights could be seen. The moonlight created shadows closer to the trailer as night clouds passed through its marble-looking aperture. Rhonda turned toward Sarah with compassion. Are you done grieving? What? What kind of question is that? Are you done grieving? This little task is about keeping you wondering about your mother, with whom Donaldson had a weird relationship. I thought you didn't want to open that particular lockbox. Wow, interjected Sarah. Watch it with the metaphor. Sorry. Rhonda took a sheepish breath. She walked over and sat down at the kitchen's rustic table. The kitchen setup included rustic-style high-back chairs, individually cushioned with coffee hue. You know me, Rhonda confessed. A little hothead, sometimes easily triggered. When Sarah stood there in silence, Rhonda continued. You're my dear friend. I feel the need to protect you. Sarah sat at the table across from her friend. We are close friends, for sure. You are one who is not put off by my shyness, and I'm not always cool. And you never complained about my nerdy intellectual way of thinking. Rhonda smiled. Over the years, we did everything together when you and Jasmine were not always engaged. A Japanese and a Puerto Ricana American who admire each other. We are a unique pair. The admiration Rhonda felt for Sara had deep sincerity, and Sara had no doubt about it at all. Although Jasmine had been an immigrant to America, she made sure Sara had become steeped in cultural America, and learning clear, succinct English was paramount. Rhonda grinned at the memory of Jasmine. My parents never cared about my accent. In fact, they were more concerned with me keeping my language and Puerto Rican ways, not becoming more American. She paused. Your English is flawless compared to mine. Compliment accepted, Sara smiled. Thinking of Rhoda's slam with her lockbox metaphor, Sara moved on. You know, this assignment is probably just what I need to keep my pledge. Your pledge? Yes, to never open the lockbox my mother left me. Shaking her head, Rhonda responded, Mira, that's a pledge I can't wrap my head around. Poquito loco, if you ask me. I don't think you will succeed in keeping it. I know, it's an unusual pledge, but now it feels right. With this assignment, I can research around it and learn more about the last year of my mother's life. Not from her, but this thing she experienced. I feel like I'm avoiding a violation in this way. Well then, how do we begin? We, you're my friend. Forget about doing this on your own. Sara grabbed Rhonda's hand across the table. For a long moment, they stared into each other's brown eyes. A strong friendship would be Sara's guard, and it was what she wanted and needed. We need to find out about the Apostle John guy and this connection to someone called the Elder. Apostle John I've heard of. He's a Christian leader among the first Christians. But beyond that, I don't know very much at all. We can go to a priest. No, let's keep religion out of this. No offense. I know you're a Christian and Roman Catholic, although you never talk about your faith. Sara released Rhonda's hand and leaned back. The library. We will ask a librarian. Lockbox, Chapter 9. The next day, early in the morning, Sara opened her eyes while still lying in her bed. The bedroom door was open. Her first thought was of her mother. She climbed out of bed, her long white nightgown draped downward over her short, petite body, and she made her way across the unlighted hall to her mother's bedroom door. Once there, she paused. Placing her hand on the door, she felt its solidity. Pushing the doorknob, she pushed open the door and stepped inside. The empty room appeared entirely normal. Everything looked unmoved, undisturbed. She took a deep breath and wandered around the room. She berated herself. What else could the room be but empty? A dream, she said to herself out loud. You had a forgotten dream. She made her way to the dresser where she kept her mother's lockbox and pulled open the top drawer. Staring down at the lockbox, its intertwined white and purple hues mesmerized Sara. She took a deep breath and grabbed the lockbox with both hands, pulling it up out of the drawer nest. In an instant, she saw the dream she had dreamed, and in the recovered benign nightmare, she observed herself standing in front of Jasmine's closed door. In her elusive vision, she opened and closed her eyes to wipe away what she believed was an illusion. Her mother's front door seemed to be there, and not there, solid, then ghostly like wavering smoke. And the next thing there was a road, not a modern road, but a very old one, made of finely cut stones fitted together. The wavering, shifting, spectral cobblestone road seemed to stretch through a town of 1, 2, 3 story structures that reminded Sarah of images she had seen of ancient cities like Rome or Athens or Jerusalem. Then the memory of her dream stopped, and Sarah was standing there holding the lockbox, a quiet white and purple box. She sighed and placed it back in the dresser nest. Steady, Sarah, she mumbled to herself. She gathered herself and made her way out of her mother's room, closing the door behind her. Freezing there in the dark hall, with the shut door at her back, Sarah focused on her breathing, trying to calm jittery nerves. Dreams can inexplicably be frightening, even though they don't contain monsters. When Sarah had recalibrated to her waking life and restored her calm, she moved off to the kitchen. After she brewed herself a cup of tea, she sat at her kitchen table, and for a long while she sat reflecting on the recovered dream. She remembered the illusion of feeling her mother's presence, recalled imagining she had heard Jasmine's melodious voice. Come take my hand, I will lead you to Ephesus. Was it crazy to connect the dots between her dream and her illusion? No, Sarah shook her head. Impossible. Then she began to plan her day. Norland Library in Boulder, Colorado became Sarah's research hub. She sat at a large brown table big enough to spread out. Donaldson had suggested she begin to find out something about the connection between the so-called elder and the Apostle John. As she sat leafing through the pages of several books, Rhonda came into view. I found you, said Rhonda with a laugh. I've been sitting here for hours, returned Sarah. Look at all of these. She gestured to the tower of books strewn over the large table. Rhonda sat at the huge wooden table next to her. She stared at Sarah with a sense of pity. Was it worth it? Was it worth it? Don't start. I'm not starting, I'm just asking. The new salary and all. The back door to your mother because you refused to open the lockbox directly. Sarah merely huffed at her friend's penetrating comment. She pulled out a book from her pile and shoved it over to Rhonda. Here, read this. Start where I folded it back with the paperclip. Rhonda leafed through the pages quietly, all the while looking back at Sarah. She began to read. If then anyone who had attended on the elders came, I asked minutely after their sayings, what Andrew or Peter said, or what was said by Philip, or by Thomas, or by James, or by John, or by Matthew, or by any other of the Lord's disciples, which things Aristian and the presbyter John, the disciple of the Lord, say. Wanda stared at the page. She repeated in her own reframing, I don't care much for a pen and ink, but I would long for hearing the voice of one of the actual hearers of Jesus, an Aristian or John the Elder or one of the other apostles. According to this guy, Papias, interjected Sarah, the one who wrote the passage you are reading, these two lists, one is called his disciples and the other the elders. The elders seem to be a unique group. A name, John, appears in both lists. In one list, John is a disciple. In the other, John is called presbyter or elder. Sarah paused, then asked Rhonda, so John and this mysterious elder are two different people. Is that what the author of this passage is saying? Who is this Papias? Asked Rhonda. Never heard of him. Neither have I, but he seems to be one of the earliest Christian writers who wrote an entire book called Expositions on the Oracles of the Lord. He mentions about the elders, as he called them, but the actual copies of any autograph are completely lost. I mean, the entire original book. What we know about this Papias comes from a large stash of quotations preserved by many ancient Christian writers after this Papias was long gone. Papias was a Greek bishop in the ancient city of Hierapolis, Pamukkale in modern-day Turkey, I believe. He was born around 60 AD and died in 130 AD. Rhonda chuckled. Oh, I like that you said Autographs. You sound really scholarly. Oh, stop it, growled Sara. As I said, it bears repeating. All that remains of Papias' very early work are these snippets, preserved in the writings of others of these so-called early church fathers. She paused. How can something like Papias' work, so important and connected to the early apostles and elders, be lost to all the ages? She took a deep breath. I can't believe this. I can believe it, returned Rhonda. When you say early, how early? Sara, leafing through some papers, to most scholars, Jesus appeared to be crucified in 30 AD. I note the non-Christian scholars, secular scholars, use the term CE for Common Era and BCE before the Common Era. Let's stick with the Christian usage, AD and BC. Rhonda agreed. After Christ and before Christ. Perfect. I know those Latin terms. AD is short for Anno Domini, which means before the Lord, and BC, before Christ. I haven't found the Latin for that one. Very good, Rhonda smiled. I'm impressed. You've been digging this morning. Sara scoffed. You are being your usual annoying self this morning. Going back to her thoughts. The Apostle John is said to have died somewhere between 90 and 95 AD. Most scholars date the Papias book to 95-110. Taking these dates as a baseline for his lost book composition, Papias would have been alive during the time of both Johns. He would have had an opportunity to hear both Johns, the apostle or disciple and this elder. Rhonda pondered Sara's comments. It seems you are decided, then, that this elder is different from the one called the apostle. She paused. Sara shrugged. I'm uncertain. I need more information. Rhonda, nodding, said, if Papias is the very first, outside the Bible, to record such things, maybe some of what he said didn't fit the ideas who came after him. Come on. She stood up. What? I think you need a break. Sara stared at her pile of books. You're right. She stretched her arms out and yawned. It's been a long morning of tedious reading. I haven't read this much in years. I am not convinced this Papias knew two Johns. One is called disciple of Jesus or apostle, and the other is called presbyter or elder. Somehow the stories of these two became merged or separated, identifying everything the apostle said and did with what this elder said and did, or vice versa, or something. Our first task is to discover which is the most probable. The two names were wrongly divided, or the two names were mistakenly merged, so that what belongs to the apostle John and what belongs to the elder John became irrevocably indistinguishable. She put her hand to her head. I don't know. Sighing, she stood up. Yeah, it's time for a break. Lockbox, Chapter 10. I asked minutely after their sayings what Andrew or Peter said, or what was said by Philip, or by Thomas, or by James, or by John, or by Matthew, or by any of the Lord's disciples, which things Aristian and the presbyter John, the disciples of the Lord, say. For I imagine that what was to be got from books and was not so profitable to me as what came from the living and abiding voice. Sara put down the book on the table between her and Rhonda in the coffee shop on the ground floor of Norland Library. She stared silently at the college students going in and out of the shop, the muttering of voices at the various tables, the charging stations where the students sat with their laptops, the barrister counter abuzz with activity. There was a certain comfort in this crowd of youth, an energy exchange that lifted Sara out of her potential doldrums. She felt so glad she took this opportunity to research at the most prestigious university in Colorado. to be among this vibrant, chattering humanity. She twirled her spoon in her coffee that filled a black cup. Her everything bagel on the plate was almost fully consumed. Her thoughts were going back to her research. That is what Bishop Irenaeus of Lyons, writing around 180 AD, quotes from the ancient guide Papias. She paused. And later, Bishop Eusebius of Caesarea, writing in 300, also quotes this passage from Papias. Wow, you really are getting this stuff under your belt, responded Rhonda. We will certainly have our work cut out for us if we are to understand how any of these crumbs lead to the answer of who is the elder. She sipped on her coffee. I'm intrigued by this Aristian guy. This phrase they quote from Papias, which things Aristian and the presbyter John. That is our clue, asserted Sara. It just seems so obvious that Papias separates out these two men because these are the ones he actually heard. He knew them personally. I agree with you. That's the logical conclusion one might draw, Rhonda, but it doesn't remove the idea that this presbyter John could be our elder and the apostle. It's vague. It doesn't necessarily mean Papias also wasn't personally familiar with that other John. That's why we still must figure out which John said what and did what. Only then can we say we know who the elder is. You might be right. Rhonda took up the book, which Sara set back on the table. She glanced outside and took in the soft twilight glow. The pinprick of stars could be seen in the clear Colorado sky. Tell me more about what you saw when you woke up this morning. Sara sat back and sighed. Well, it feels crazy to talk about it. Humor me, if you insist. I thought I had a dream. I couldn't remember the dream, so I got up and walked over to my mother's bedroom. I went in and, out of curiosity, lifted out my mother's lockbox. And after holding it, it seemed to remind me of my dream. In my dream, I was standing by my mother's bedroom door. The door seemed to be there and not there, solid and then ghostly, like wavering smoke. And the next thing, a road appeared in the dream. Not a modern road, but a very old one, made of finely cut stones fitted together tightly. The road looked to be wavering, elusive, wispy. It seemed to stretch through a town of structures of various sizes with red rooftops. And as I gazed at them, they reminded me of images of ancient cities, of Rome and Greece and Israel, or something insane like that. There the dream ended. I was standing holding the lockbox. Wow, that sounds intense. You think? What happened next? What do you mean? Did you open the lockbox? No, Rhonda, I told you I'm not going to violate my mother's privacy. Sara sighed. She glanced around the coffee shop and saw the other patrons were oblivious to their conversation. She confessed, nothing else happened. I opened my mother's bedroom door and stepped inside the room, and everything appeared entirely normal. Everything looked unmoved, undisturbed. I put the lockbox in the top drawer next to its key, stared down at it in my hands, looking at it crazily. I didn't know what to expect. Something. Instead, its white and purple hued solid silence mesmerized me. I opened the drawer, placed the lockbox inside, and closed the drawer again. Then I left for the kitchen. That's it. Rhonda looked at Sara. That's it? You were expecting something else? It was a dream. Rhonda picked up Irenaeus' book and began to read the quote from Papias. As the presbyters say, then those who are deemed worthy of an abode in heaven shall go there, and others shall enjoy the delights of paradise, and others shall possess the splendor of the city, for everywhere the Savior will be seen according as they shall be worthy who see him. As Rhonda read, Sara glanced over her friend's shoulder, and Rhonda's spoken words seemed to fade in her hearing. In that moment, as Sara listened to Rhonda's fading words, She began to daydream. At least that's what she suddenly imagined she was doing. Daydreaming, or was it hallucinating? The solid world around them became wavy, bending, and shifting. Then there appeared a beam of light, and Sarah's dark eyes focused on the dull white light, exposing itself to an opening of her mother's door, just beyond some student tables. Sarah shook her head, trying to dislodge the daydream. Looking at Rhonda, she saw she was still reading. She could see Rhonda clearly. She could hear her friend's Spanish accents sharply. Rhonda was there. Sarah felt she could reach out and touch her. Instead, Sarah focused on the loss of substance around them, the white light blazing in the open door. Then slowly the daydream melted away, and the solidity of the row of tables and college students in the coffee shop reasserted themselves. By contrast, Rhonda had stayed substantive, consistent through the sudden loss of solidity among everything and everyone else. Sarah could tell her friend was oblivious to what Sarah had just experienced. With emphasis, Rhonda was continuing. Get this, she said excitedly. The presbyters, the disciples of the apostles, say that this is the gradation and arrangement of those who are saved, and that they advance through steps of this nature, and that, moreover, they ascend through the Spirit to the Son, and through the Son to the Father, and that in due time the Son will yield up his work to the Father, even as it is said to be the apostles. For he must reign till he have put all enemies under his feet. The last enemy shall be destroyed is death. For in the times of the kingdom, the just man who is on the earth shall forget to die. Sarah, her mind still on what she just experienced, shook her head. I don't get it. The just man who is on the earth shall forget to die. That is a reference to the elder. You are speculating, shaking the cobwebs out of her distraction, countered Sarah. She couldn't escape the power which she had just daydreamed from the memory of her earlier dream. What is the matter with you? Huh? What? Oh, Sarah stood up. I'm sorry. Time to go. Were you listening to me? Rhonda asked, also standing. Sarah was walking to the outside exit into the night. I heard you. The just man who is on the earth shall forget to die. Lockbox, Chapter 11. That night, Sarah sat in her trailer home living room. She was still reading Irenaeus, gathering as much knowledge as she could. The sensation of being in some fashion haunted by her mother grew stronger. This feeling of being followed by the presence of Jasmine had little to do with what one might imagine in ghost stories, of being tormented by an angry ghost. Rather, there burned inside Sarah the purpose to know her mother more accurately. Jasmine's gift of the lockbox had punched a hole in the way Sarah possessed the memory of her mother. Sarah believed she needed to heal the breach in her heart, and that meant recovering her real mother. She had the white purple hued lockbox, the mysterious translation from Donaldson, and the haunting figure of this ancient Christian figure, Elder John, whoever, as clues. The lines that Rhonda quoted from Irenaeus that most gripped Sarah was not the one about the just man forgetting to die, but rather the line, the presbyters, the disciples of the apostles. That line directed Sarah's attention, further confirming to her that the presbyter or elder might be the same John, but neither referred to the apostle John. According to Donaldson's translation of a supposedly long lost autograph, the elder had said something about the Antichrist. He didn't show Sarah the text he kept to himself. So that night, Sarah sat reading, thinking, remembering the wavering road she saw in her dream, the frequent memory of that dream she felt in Norland's coffee shop. She read a passage from Irenaeus' book out loud. Papias, who is now mentioned by us, affirms that he received the sayings of the apostles from those who accompanied them. And he moreover asserts that he heard in person Aristian and the presbyter John. Accordingly, he mentions them frequently by name, and in his writings gives their traditions. Sarah had promised herself she would not open her mother's lockbox, even though it had been expected. Jasmine had left Sarah the key. Instead, Sarah had come to a new determination. Since her dream was connected to simply touching the lockbox, she could act accordingly and see what happens. It felt good to now think this way. It didn't feel like a violation of her pledge to herself. Inspired by this reasoning, she retrieved the white and purple box from her mother's dresser drawer and gently caressed it while she went through her research notes. Sarah experienced a sensation of unexpected comfort from having the locked box close by, almost as if its very contours promised the hope of Jasmine's fidelity. The physical proximity eliminated Sarah's anxiety. This feeling of being connected to her mother by having the lockbox nearby, by touching it, felt dreamy. Sarah could let go of all her fears, all her uncertainties, and she could imagine her mother's heart. That was truly the strange part to Sarah, the way the lockbox seemed to give her access to her mother's inner world. She could not explain why she imagined such a connection. These reflections warned of irrational emotion, not Sarah's usual modus operandi. Nevertheless, here she sat, caressing the lockbox, drifting away in her thoughts, daydreaming. Sarah imagined hearing rumblings, like wheels going over a hard road. She imagined hearing someone speaking. I am the living voice Papias spoke of. At first, Sarah opened her eyes. She escaped from her ethereal musing. I must be dreaming these things because of my mother's death, a trauma playing itself out. I didn't realize how incomplete my morning must have been. My subconscious is making things up. Sarah closed her eyes again, the lockbox now perched on her lap. So let the dream come, she whispered to herself. She sat silently, comfortably, the lockbox on her lap, until she dozed off again. And she dreamed the voice. Keep coming, said the voice. In her dream, Sarah stood at the edge of her living room in the dark hall leading to the bedrooms. Who are you? She called out in her dreamy world. Her voice echoed. I am the living voice, the echo came back. The impulse to flee out of the dream pulled at Sarah, but she continued to experience her spectral journey. Who are you that calls to me? You will go to Ephesus. There you will meet with John the Aged, and there you will be told what you need to do. Ephesus? Why Ephesus? Sarah felt as though she were flying through a void. My mother mentioned Ephesus to me. I thought I heard her say Ephesus. The voice continued insistent. You will go, because you have a need to. You will know when it is time. You desire to know your mother more accurately. Is this not so? Okay, this is crazy. I'm not hearing this voice. Sarah forced open her eyes and escaped again from her dream. Hearing distinctly the quiet hum of her refrigerator in the nearby kitchen confirmed to her she was home in her trailer. Nevertheless, she believed she had just been in a flying dream and heard a voice in the airy void, all while at the same time sensing she never left from being right there in her living room. Fearing she may be going mad, Sarah shouted again. I said this is crazy and I'm not hearing this. It's not happening. Silence. Are you there? Silence. Sara shook her head. Of course not. I was dreaming. How stupid of me. She got up and carried the lockbox back to her mother's bedroom, secured it back in the dresser drawer, and departed.